Today, I'm joined by Josh Yudin from the Academy of Marketing. He shares his journey from manufacturing to media sales and what really matters for the leaders today: passion, integrity, and clear communication. Let's dive in. Josh, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
I'll just jump right in.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So, for those of who may not know you yet, can you share who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Josh. I live in Atlanta. I what do I do? Um, I'm a dad, and I'm actually in Indianapolis right now at a
Nice.
hotel because my daughter decided she wanted to go to a dance competition. She's a competitive dancer, and her studio didn't want to go because it's right after the holidays. And she said, "I'll go on my own." So that's exactly the kind of stuff that I primarily do. Is as my time sunsets and they get started. If you want to take the initiative on your own to fly to Indianapolis in the winter, it's 4 degrees, and you want to go dance on your own without your studio, without your friends, and you're that passionate about it. Um, I'm in because I can honestly say at this point in my career, the number one thing I want to do is be that passionate about anything. Anything. I would take that passionate about anything. And the only thing I'm that passionate about these days is my daughters. So if I could recapture that in business, um, that's what I would want most for me and for really anybody else. There's a great saying that I learned years ago, but I really only in the last couple have really come to understand exactly what it meant. It says you should never do the right things to make money. You make money when you do the right things. And I didn't really understand that completely until recently. And if you read about the most successful people, and I don't mean successful in terms of money, it just so happens that successful people have money, but they're not successful because they made a lot of money. They made a lot of money because they were successful. And the definition of success in that case is they did something they really enjoyed. Because they enjoyed it, they got in flow a lot. Every time they got into it, they just got in flow. And when you're in flow, like magic happens. It's like watching my daughter dance. I get emotional every time I watch her dance. She's so good at it because she's literally, physically, and mentally in flow. And the great things that come from that are incredible. And so, what I do for a living is really, really more and more is try to find things where I find myself in flow by accident, where there's energy.
That's amazing. I mean, that kind of leads to somewhat of a leading to this question. So, what led you down to this path and into the work that you're doing today?
Um, like everybody else, convoluted. Um, so I went to school and studied marketing, but like most people in school, I used, unless you're pre-law, pre-med, or maybe a CPA, you don't necessarily use much of what you get at college in your profession because it changes so much anyway, right? What it basically says is I can learn, right? You have a degree, a certificate that says I can learn, teach me more of real what you really want me to know. But I came out and I was going to take over the family business, and it was a manufacturing company. It's character building, right? It looks like it was real. So the manufacturing business was interesting. My dad had built it. He started it and built it, and it was pretty successful. And we had big clients like Walmart, Target, Publix, Home Depot. These were big, and he had gotten it to be a pretty successful business. But he wasn't going to. He aged very, very slowly. Partly because he was in flow. He loved it, and pretty quickly it became obvious he was going to stay for a long time, and it wasn't going to work with the two of us there. I was either going to have a dad or have a boss, and I wasn't going to have both. And so I told him that, and I said, I'm gonna have a dad. I don't really want you to be my boss. I don't think this is going anywhere good. So I didn't know what to do, and I had one job, and it was okay. But I had a buddy whose father was an anchor, like the like back in the day, a TV anchor, the local when that was a thing,
Yeah.
right? like Ron Burgundy on Anchorman. He was literally like Ron Burgundy. He was big personality, pretty good looking guy. He was a local celebrity. He was a big deal. He was in the CBS affiliate in Atlanta. He's a big deal locally. Um, and he said, I'm going to be in media. Why don't you be in media with me? He was my college roommate. I said, I don't know anything about that. He said, well, the way people usually get in is in sales. And then you can find out from there, but you get into the station, a radio or TV station. So he
Mhm.
sent me a link back then. I think it was not a link. It was probably a piece of paper he handed me. And he said, right. He said, there's a radio station called WCNN at the CNN Center in Atlanta hiring. I think you should go apply. And I did. And I didn't realize that WCNN was the call letters, but it hadn't been CNN in a long time. What it was an African American radio station.
Okay.
And I was a 24-year-old white Jewish guy, but but it was awesome. I got the job,
Yeah.
and my boss, who ended up being in my wedding, was a great guy. Another white guy, only about 10 years older than me, so he was only in his 30s. He was the sales manager, and it was owned by a family business, by a family also. And the owner was there every day. His name was David Dickey, and a bunch of stuff came out of that. So one was he said, "I'm going to do it right with you. I've hired a bunch of veterans. I've hired before. I'm going to hire you because you don't know anything, and I am going to teach you. Like the degree from college said you can learn. I'm going to teach you the way I think the perfect media salesperson should be." I said,
That's
"Okay."
amazing.
It
Yeah.
was amazing. So the second day, first day we got like my paper signed and everything. The second day we go into this tiny conference room. It was a dump. The CNN Center hadn't been renovated. It was a dump. I mean, it was nasty. We go to this old conference room, and he takes the whiteboard, he erases everything on it, and he says, "All right, let's get started." And he says, "I'm going to tell you three things you have to do to be successful." And he wrote them on the board. And I still have a picture of it and it hangs in my office. And he said, number one, you must be an expert in Black consumer marketing. And what was great was it didn't really matter the Black part or the African American part. It meant I had to be an expert in whatever space that I was in. If you're going to do this, take it seriously. Be an expert. Don't learn enough. Don't get cliches. Be an expert. And since I wasn't African American, and it was an African American station for R&B for 45 plus, I was 24 and white. So I had to become an expert. I couldn't take for granted. Like, had I gone to work for a top 40 station, I've been like, oh yeah, totally. I've listened to this my whole life. I know everything, but I wouldn't know anything about the industry. But I think because I listened to it, I know it. I had none of
Mhm.
that. I literally had to learn and learn what it was to become an expert in something, anything, tennis, golf, being married. It requires you to put down what you think you know. Well, since I didn't know anything, I didn't even have to have that baggage. It was a gift of unbelievable. It was unbelievable. The second thing he said is be a tireless worker. Just be a tireless worker. And now, what I learned later on, back to being in flow, is the only way you can be a tireless worker is when you like what you do. Otherwise, you're tired all the time,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, if you're hiring salespeople, there's all kinds of tests and personality profiling you can do. You can have them submit a proposal, do a mock presentation. There's really only a couple of things that you really need to ask a salesperson to find out if they're going to be good at what they do, not just for you, but for them. If they're good for them, they're their own worst critic. If they're good for them, they'll be great for you. You don't have to worry about you. Worry about, are they good for them? And there's only a couple things you need to know. Number one is tell me a story. It just, a story should, oh, God, I've got such a good story. So my daughter and I, we go to this Indianapolis trip, and one thing after the other goes wrong. But then she ends up winning the competition. It was like, a
Was it?
salesperson, a salesperson barely needs to be asked before they roll into storytelling mode. It's all they do. all day long, whether they're selling or having a beer with their neighbor. They cannot help themselves. They are storytelling machines. If you ask someone to tell a story and they sit there for a second and they can't think of a story, I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like a story about work, or you got a problem? A salesperson, a natural salesperson, is really a natural storyteller. They apply that to sales. So that's number one. The other is, are you tired at the end of the day? Like after a bunch of sales calls? If the answer is yes, they're not a natural salesperson. Now, look, we work 5 out of 7 days, and some people work more than that. And we work 8 to 14 hours a day, depending on the day, right? So after the end of the week, by Friday, I expect you to be a little fatigued, especially if you have traffic and you know, you got kids and a dog and you're trying to exercise and you're trying to do your job. It's a lot to pack in a week. So at the end of the week or the end of the month or the end of the year, like we are, now starting a new year, you should be, being fatigued is understandable. But at the end of the day, if you've had a bunch of sales appointments, a natural salesperson will have so much energy. They can't, literally, they go home and their husband or wife is like, "Oh my God, you're wearing me out." You're like, "I know, I'm just so wired up. I mean, I had this unbelievable day. I had this appointment, and then that appointment, we had this best conversation." Like, you just feed off the energy of telling stories and talking to other people. And if that doesn't happen, and instead I had 5 meetings today and I'm just exhausted. I just don't want to talk to anybody. Can I just sit and be quiet? You're in the wrong business, right? And the third thing he taught me was always deal with clients with the highest degree of integrity. And he's right. And I can honestly say, with some regret, but mostly just transparency, I haven't always done that. And it was never malicious. It was never to hurt anybody, but it wasn't always with full transparency, because it's really easy. I mean, it's really, when you're teaching your kids, for example, how to be a good person, it's really hard to teach them that when a small white lie will solve so many problems, right? How do I look at these jeans? Small white lie keeps you out of trouble. I mean, then you just stack that. It starts like that, and then it just becomes easier and easier and easier. And it's a slippery slope. But what you're doing is you're taking these chip shots at integrity over time. And at some point, you don't know the difference anymore. And, the mind will justify what the heart has already decided. So if you've already decided that I'm gonna not hurt this person, it starts off great. I'm not gonna hurt this person. How do I look in these jeans? Fantastic. But at what point do you start to realize you don't even know the lies that you're saying anymore? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a very, very slippery slope. And when I look back at that wall that he wrote, be an expert, be a tireless worker, deal with clients with the highest degree of integrity, they really all come back to the same thing. They all come back to, do you love what you do? And if you love what you do, you'll want to be an expert in it and you'll become one organically. You'll never get tired of doing it and talking about it and telling stories about it. And you'll just be honest the way a car mechanic is versus a car salesman. A car salesman wants to sell you a new car. The car mechanic just loves being a mechanic. He's like, "Oh my God, this car is in great shape. I think you can put another 300,000 miles in this car." The salesperson's like, "What are you talking about? You just took it out of the market for 6 more years." And he goes, "Yeah, but this car is incredible. Look at the way they've cared for it. It's awesome." That's all they can think about is how much they love the fact that this mechanically taken care of machine is functioning great. That's all they can think about. So I got into radio. I became a radio salesperson. I became a radio sales manager. And eventually, the radio stations got bigger, the jobs got bigger. Satellite radio came. I ran a Southeast sales division for XM radio.
Mhm.
And when I took the job, I knew it was my last job. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but I was like, this is my last job for somebody else. It's a good job. I'm not quite ready to take the jump myself, but I'm making, this is a conscious decision. This is my last job. And I did that right before we had kids. I was probably 31 or 2. And then I started my own little agency. And I almost immediately realized I made a mistake because it turns out what you do to be a president's club or champions club or top salesperson is almost the exact opposite of what you do as an ad agency on the other side. So an ad agency has to actually put together campaigns that work. A salesperson has to put together campaigns that sell for the station. So a client goes, listen, I really need this program to work. I need to generate leads. As a salesperson, you go, absolutely. As an ad agency, you go, I think we need to take a step back and need to understand consumer behavior. That's not
Right.
that's not how media works. People don't watch TV and then call. That's not what happens. That's not a digital thing. Oh yeah, so much has changed in digital marketing. A, no, it hasn't. And B, that's never, ever happened. It's never happened. Right. And so what happened was I had to basically go back and become an expert because I wasn't an expert. I was an expert in selling media. I wasn't an expert in using media. And so I had to go back and I called it the Wilbur and Orville Wright approach. I didn't go back to school and get a highfalutin degree. I could have done that. But instead, Orville and Wilbur Wright built the first working airplane out of a bike shop. They were not masters in aerodynamics or scientists. They were mechanically inclined bike repair people, but they invented the first flying plane. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get after it. I'm just going to learn. And it allowed me to not have the baggage and become a real expert. And so as I became an expert, I designed things that worked. And as they worked, our client list grew. As our client list grew, I had a bigger and bigger target on my back for media companies to call and try to sell me. And if I didn't buy, they would escalate it. And one day I got a call from a vice president at Comcast, which was at the time the world's largest media company. And he said, I'm going to be in town and I want to understand a little bit more about your clients and why you don't think cable is good for them. I said, well, I never said that, but sure, I may need a job one day. Well, let's go to lunch. You're a big, powerful guy. So we go get sushi and we're sitting there and I say, listen, I think your medium is great. I think the power of video is amazing. I think back then zoning was a big deal. So in the old days, you could only buy the whole market and they would like let you buy these little zones. So you could be on ESPN, but just in your backyard. And for many people, being on a brand like ESPN was mind blowing. And it was so cost effective relative to what they were used to paying for TV that they were cleaning up. And I was telling him all this. He goes, so you like the medium? I go, I love it. He goes, you like our sales model, how to buy it? I go, absolutely. And he goes, but you're not using it. I said, no. And he goes, this makes no sense to me. I said, I know that's the problem. He said, what am I missing? I said, because I know why to buy it. Doesn't mean I know how to use it. I have to sit down and have an idea for this client to use it in this way and what the expectations are and how I'm going to explain it to the client, how I'm going to position it, how I'm going to do the creative. And I thought he was going to be mad at me. And instead he goes, you know what? You're right. He goes, we don't know anything about how to use our medium. He said, could you
Yeah.
teach it? I said, teach what I know, or teach what? And he goes, could you teach us how to use the medium that we sell? I said, well, that's interesting. I don't know. I've never taught anything. I didn't have kids. I've never taught anything to anybody in my life. He goes, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you start a little side company, call it whatever you want, and I'll give you one of our, because they were zoned, they had zoned sales teams. So 5-person sales teams and one sales manager, very small, intimate group. He said, I'll give you one team. And if their feedback's good, maybe I'll give you a market. And if that works out, who knows? And I'll pay you next to nothing. And I said, okay, I mean, I've got the time and the interest. So I went and I looked for a name and a website that existed in the Academy of Marketing. Nobody claimed. And I bought it and I started this little LLC and I did his 5-person training thing for a few weeks. And a year later, I was Comcast's largest training vendor. And I was
Wow.
flying around the country. And so for
Right.
about 10 years, I spent about 35 weeks a year on a plane. And the groups got bigger and bigger and bigger until Comcast and HBO and NPR were all clients. And I remember walking into the hotel that I'm in now for my daughter's dance competition. Ironically, I walked into this hotel, into the ballroom where I was supposed to be doing one of my teachings, and they had hired me as their keynote speaker for their national kickoff. And it was a company called IMG. And it's the world's largest sports marketing company. And I didn't see the room because I was behind stage. They're putting a mic on me, and the group's gotten big enough. I now needed a mic, the lavalier and the thing, and I was used to that. So sound check, okay, got it. And I walked out, and there were 1,500 people in the room, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And so it was run. I was on a high. I was on a roll. I was 40 years old, in the best shape of my life, at these cool hotels. But my kids were growing up, and I was gone. I had made it so I only was gone one day a week. I would leave Tuesday night on the last flight out, 10 or 11 o'clock, so I could put them to bed. I would get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and work out on Wednesday, train all day, and then catch the last flight out on Wednesday night. So I was home when they woke up on Thursday morning. And it was great, but I was getting tired, and they were getting older. And also, I could see the writing on the wall. The media companies were starting to reorg. Digital was coming. Just things were changing. So we always had what we call case study clients. So case study clients were real companies we worked with where we put these things that we taught into actual use in the marketplace. Because eventually, inevitably, what would happen is one of these 1,500 people go, "Hey, I have a question. Do you have an example of this actually working? I mean, I get what you're saying, but can you give me an example of it actually working?" And so we would have examples. I go, "Absolutely, we do. We got a company in LA. We got this one in Atlanta. Here's what we did. We always had requests for case study clients that wanted to come on board because our story was great. Our story was we're the company that teaches the media how media works. They go, I want to work with that.
Mhm.
But I didn't have the bandwidth. I was traveling. But I eventually doing less travel and more case study clients. And so when the reorgs happened, that inevitably would, we were positioned to be okay. And what had happened was through complete serendipity, through no prescient thought of my own, the clients that we said yes to initially just happened to be in home services, like air conditioning, heating, plumbing, big companies. Some of them were manufacturers out of like Japan,
Mhm.
but they were still in at the end of the day selling products to homeowners for basically what we now think are like God given rights, like hot water and air conditioning. And when the recession happened in 2007, we grew.
Right. Oh,
Home service businesses exploded. All the money went to them. You would do without a new car, but you will not do without air conditioning. Will not do without running water and hot water. Then COVID happened. Fast forward another 12 years. We are now all the way in the home service businesses, and that paid off really well. Everybody's getting checks they didn't even ask for from the government, just in case to keep the economy going. And everybody I knew put all that money in their house, and home
nice.
services exploded again. So that became a thing. So that's where I am now. I'm at this crossroads of I want to get back into training.
Yeah.
I miss it. It was amazing. And the media companies have now come full circle. And I've had some reach out and go, hey, it's been a minute since we've done any real training and we're seeing it. Our salespeople or the new ones have never gotten any. The older people are asking for refreshers. So I'm starting to get back into that. And at the same time, figure out better ways to scale working with home service businesses. Because there are some real problems coming in the economy
Mhm.
that there are a few people that are pretty bright, like a Jamie Dimon, a JP Morgan, and some others that are seeing, but most people are so busy being busy that
Mhm.
they're not putting two and two together. So you've got student debt. So you got student debt that people ran up to get degrees that they do not use. 54% of students don't use their degree. So you run up student debt to get a degree that you don't use for a job that AI is going to do better, faster, and cheaper. So that's a problem. When all of that comes to roost, that's going to be a problem. The other thing is because everybody thinks the college degree is like a God given right that you're supposed to, and you can't get a job without a college degree. Our parents all told us there's an old song that says, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Okay. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such. And that became a thing. Everybody wants to be a white collar professional. The problem is we don't need white collar professionals. The vast majority of white collar jobs are moving things from the left of the desk to the right of the desk. There's a whole middle tier that gets laid off almost every 10 years. There's this round of layoffs. And people go, oh, it's terrible. It's like, well, yeah, but did you not see that coming? Didn't you think it was weird when the guy next to you with the exact same job was let go and they didn't replace him for 6 months? How can you have a job that means anything that a company can do without for 6 months? Like in my neighborhood, if the garbage man quits, that is that job is replaced in 24 hours. They'll pay the guy triple for a minute if they have to get somebody to pick up the trash. That's a critical job. Air conditioning, critical job, right? Police, critical job. What job do you do that they don't even need? They can't even decide if they're going to rehire for that position. How important? What were you actually doing? Right? And that's where we're at. So we have 2.5 million too few trade positions filled. There's 2.5 million open jobs, plumbing, electric, etc. The problem is those are the things that make the country go.
Mm.
Try having a meeting in a conference room with no air conditioning. Like as stupid as that sounds, right? We are going to, and all now of the best talent in that field are being gobbled up by AI data centers to build them because AI data centers have to be built, electrified, and cooled. So Google comes along and they'll pay an HVAC technician $200,000 a year to work on their data centers. Well, guess who's not then coming to your house? Him, because he can only make $100,000, which is still plenty of money being a residential HVAC technician. So we are going to have a problem here. By 2030, that number is supposed to double. So if we don't start reallocating workforce in a way that makes sense based on technology changes, needs in the marketplace, the economy will grind to a halt, whether we believe it or not, whether we want to believe it or not. And it's how all great nations or empires eventually fall, is from internal. They simply cannot keep up the infrastructure for a variety of reasons. So more and more, because I'm a dad, because I did teaching, and because I want to be in flow, I spend more and more of my time thinking about, can I help with that? Can I connect some dots that actually make a difference? I'll make plenty of money doing it as a byproduct of doing the right thing. But the right thing is to have conversations maybe like this or with the one I had before this, where I just point out, hey, guys, we gotta we gotta get together here and stop worrying about selling your product or your service. And if you have a really good week of closing deals, you have a nice glass of wine on Friday and tell yourself you did a good job this week. There has to
Mm.
be more, at least for more people. Not every single person, not everybody's up to it. And a 25-year-old is probably not ready for that. But the people that are between 40 and 60 years old that still have plenty of energy, are at their peak of their careers, maybe don't have to worry so much about paying their own bills. Maybe instead of worrying about the vacations that we take or our 401ks, we just rise above a little bit and say, is there more that we should be concerned with? Right? Is it okay for me to tell my kids to wear a helmet when they bike to keep them safe, but that I don't actually worry about the entire landscape of the economy they're going to work in 10 years? Like, if it's my job to protect them, shouldn't I be protecting them? Because in 10 years, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. It's just going to be too late. You need 5 years to get somebody ready to be in the trades. So it has to start now, so that in 5 years, that number is not double. And in 10 years, it'll be quadruple. And
Right.
then it's over. Then we're at a standstill.
That's deep.
That was heavy, right? That was probably more than you wanted from this thing. Sorry.
That's deep. I don't know if it's getting a lighter by asking this question, but so This is
Let's get
actually one of
lighter.
the
Let's get
interact
lighter.
I wanted to be more like for the people who are actually the leaders and agency owners, whoever is in their industry, trying to be an expert. In your view, what's a one skill that's absolutely essential for these people?
Well, first, let's define what a leader is. So I see a lot. Oh, we had a leadership meeting. Okay. What is that? What is that? So you can be on LinkedIn and you can see quotes and you can see all kinds of stuff. What it takes to be a leader. There's courage, intelligence, empathy, EQ. But it really technically only takes one thing to be an actual leader. There's only one thing: followers. If you don't have followers, you're technically not a leader. You can have high courage, you can have high EQ, you can have intelligence. And if you're standing in a room by yourself, you're not a leader,
That's very true.
right? You have
That's
to have
very
followers,
simply put and very true.
right? Now,
Yeah.
you can be a manager, whatever that title, manager, director, partner, president, CEO. That's a title. That doesn't make you a leader. That's a title. And there are lots of directors, senior directors, VPs, CEOs that don't have people that would follow them. So they're not a leader. They have the title, they have authority, but they don't have followers that would just do whatever they ask because once more into the breach, you said we do. I believe in you 100%. And then you have people who do and who have followers and they don't have a title. You see this in offices really all the time. People just gravitate towards this person. They're all peers. They're all salespeople, or they're all engineers, or they're all coders. But this one person seems to have this outweighted thing,
Hmm.
right? That's the leader. That's the actual leader. So that's the first thing I would say is, are you actually a leader? Or do you have a really good title
Right.
because you did the right things to make money? You played the game, you had tenure, you put yourself in the right positions, you took the right jobs, you did the right interviews, and now you're senior director of blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's number one. So the number one skill that I would say is regardless of what industry you're in, whether we're talking about marketing or um, dairy farming, it doesn't matter. The number one thing for a leader is the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, are you communicating in a way that makes people feel like they're heard, they're empowered, and it's clear to them what their role is going to be, how important it is, and how it's going to benefit them to be part of this mission. One of the best stories I ever heard was that boss in radio that wrote the three things on the wall. He told me a story, and I looked it up, and it was true. And it was actually, I think, in Time Magazine or Rolling Stone. It was incredible. So when JFK announced that we were going to go to the moon by 1969, before the end of the decade, he said, we're going to go to the moon before the end of the decade. There's this huge push to do it, right? That was a big jump for us. And the only way to get that done was to have everybody believe that this was important, whether it was for national pride or your career or the betterment of humankind. This was important. So everybody had to believe. So one of the magazines, I think it was Time, sent a reporter to cover this incredible effort going on at NASA headquarters. Everybody was working on going to the moon. There were no other projects. It was this at every level, from the head of NASA to the engineer to the guy designing the rockets to the one doing systems checks, had to believe, right? So it's taken a lot of hours, and there really is not room for error. If the thing explodes, it's over. So he's doing all these interviews, he's interviewing the astronauts and the videoing the centrifugal thing, them, learning how to be in anti-gravity and all that. And he's packing up the day. He's interviewed everybody he could think of. He's finishing his notes, packs his briefcase up, and he goes to the bathroom. And he's in the bathroom at NASA headquarters. And the janitor comes in and he's mopping the floor. And he decides he's going to interview one more person. And he interviews the janitor. And he says, "Can I ask you some questions?" And he says, "Yeah." And he goes, "What do you do here?" And he goes, I'm the custodian, I'm the janitor, basically." And he goes, "Interesting." He said, Do you like it? He said, yeah, of course. Of course I do. I get to work for NASA. And he goes, huh. And he was thinking, he was asking about being a janitor, but the guy said he works for NASA. That was how I identified it. And he said, well, what is it that you like so much about it? He said, are you kidding? He said, I get to play this hugely important role in getting us to the moon. And he said, you do? And he goes, let me tell you something. Bathrooms are a germ infested place in most places. He goes, you know what we can't have here? Germs.
Mhm.
He goes, if these astronauts or a key engineer gets sick and he's out for a couple of days, we don't have a couple of days. And if one of the astronauts gets sick 2 weeks before launch, they have to cancel the whole launch. And the astronauts are in close proximity. If one gets sick, they all get sick. And the number one place you get sick is germs from the bathroom. He said, so this is the cleanest bathroom you will ever see on the planet Earth up until that launch. And I have to do that. I have to make sure. And he's dumbfounded. He's asking this guy who could be like, what do you do? I mop the floors. But instead, he didn't say I mop the floors. What he said is, I'm sending people to the moon. Somebody, some leader communicated to this all the way to the janitor that your role is one of many, but it's not less important than anybody else's. And your role in sending us to the moon is literally mission critical. And I just want you to know that and believe that and I'm thankful for you. And this guy and everybody up, down, left, and right believed it. And we went to the moon.
Amazing.
It's amazing. Whoever that leader was, maybe it was JFK, but it had
Yeah.
to keep going, right? He had to
Yeah.
find other leaders because he can't be there every day. The NASA administrator. Okay. But how about the guy, the guy in charge of custodial services has to believe it. Has to.
Yeah. That's a great story. That's amazing.
It's incredible. It's amazing that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And then, like, obviously he is very proud of his job and he's working harder because he's very proud of what he's doing.
That's right.
So,
He's not just punching the clock and he puts the mop on the floor a couple times. After
yeah.
he's done mopping, he gets down and sees, is there more to mop? Did I do my very best? My very best. Did I do my very best? And that's really all there is.
Oh, that's great. Oh, this is, well, not the last question, but not the least question. But this was very insightful. And where can people find you and learn more about you and what you do?
It's a good question. So, LinkedIn, of course, under Josh Yudin, or how you and I met Forbes,
Yep.
the Forbes Council. That's usually a pretty easy way. The academyofmarketing.com is the website. Um, you can always email me, Josh at the academyofmarketing.com. As you can see, I love talking. So if you reach out, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, we'll put the link in, link that on the show note when we publish this. But yeah, this was, but it's very interesting stories and insights that you share. So it's like it's not like boring stories that you just have to like listen to. It's very helpful. So it's going to be very insightful for me and then everyone who's going to be listening to this.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
I want to ask you a question. So, what would you most like to happen from doing these podcasts? Like, if you could say the one thing that you most would like to happen from the work that you're putting in, what would you say it is?
I think it's more learning. So the people who have
Mm,
experience, like you have all this experience leading up to your background and whatever you accomplished throughout that and all the lessons you learned, I think it's best way to like my second best way. I think the best way probably would be you experiencing yourself, but you're just one person and time's limited. So there's always a limit to what you can do and you can learn. But if you can learn secondhand, I think that's the next best thing you can do. I mean, like books and those things can be resourceful, but actually hearing and learning from people who accomplished something is a second best thing I think, other than you experiencing it. So that's one thing.
it's
It's
really
my
cool.
own selfish wish to learn more,
Right.
but I'm also hoping to have other people have access to learn
That's really cool. That's a great answer. So thank you for
more.
that. That's really good. In fact, I'm going to share that with my kids.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And then anything else to add?
Nope. I would just wish everybody that sees this a happy new year, and treat it like a blank canvas. Don't be so fast to jump back into the year and make it a repeat of the last year. Doesn't mean last year wasn't
Yeah,
great. Last year could have been your best year ever, but you had that year already. Let's have a new year, right?
I can't agree more.
A new year, not a new calendar year, an actual new different year.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It's
That's
exciting,
really exciting. Whatever. Yeah.
right? There's
Mhm.
a thing that I heard, and I'll leave you with this. They are now finding out, of course, through science, what most people have already known instinctively, right? It's like when Harvard does a research for $2 million, it says, we've learned it's better to be in shape. It's like, yeah, I think everybody kind of got that, but they did a $2 million study just to make sure. So what they're finding is that um, you can't get out of bed in the morning if you don't have hope.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
no, like literally, like
Yeah.
scientifically, it's why animals, dogs, people sometimes just don't wake up.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to hope for. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with them.
Right.
There's nothing inherently, they don't have a stroke. They just don't have hope, and they just cease to exist. So whatever it is that you're going to do this year, find it hope.
That's very important. I've seen people actually getting sick when they lose the goal and the hope.
You
So
just become smaller. You can almost see them shrinking.
yeah, and just
You know,
deteriorate. Yeah.
deteriorate, apathy,
Yeah.
right? Atrophy and apathy. Anyway, Miki, thank you for your time. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. And
Yep.
happy new year. And
You
then
too.
we'll stay in touch. All
All right.
right.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.